The night was thick with the scent of earth and blood, the kind that lingers long after a battle ends. Under the crimson moon, Seraphina stood alone at the edge of the ruined forest, her pale skin glowing against the darkness like a ghost caught in a dream. Her heart beat slower than it should, a rhythm that matched the slow drip of blood that stained her lips. The vampire's hunger was always there, gnawing at her, but tonight was different. The hunger twisted with something else, an unbearable pull. The warmth of the coming dawn stirred within her like a phantom, and for the first time, the sun didn't feel like an enemy. It felt like a promise she could never have. As the minutes passed, the moonlight shifted, casting eerie shadows across the clearing. Seraphina's breath quickened, her fangs sinking deeper into her lower lip. She could feel it now, the ache in her veins, the slow burn building from the inside out. The sun was coming. It always came, no matter how much she wished it wouldn't. But tonight, it was different. In the distance, a low growl echoed through the trees, jagged and primal. Seraphina's sharp eyes flickered toward the sound, muscles tensing beneath her delicate skin. She wasn't alone. From the underbrush, Kale emerged, his presence a silent storm. He moved with the power of a creature born from darkness, his body rippling with raw, untamed strength. His eyes, a piercing shade of amber, locked onto hers as if the world had narrowed to just the two of them. His breath was heavy, his chest rising and falling as if he had been running for hours, yet he showed no sign of fatigue. The air around him seemed to hum, charged with something dangerous, something untouchable. Seraphina felt it immediately. The rawness of him, the pull. It was as if his very essence called to hers, an invitation and a warning all in one. Her body wanted to step forward, but her mind screamed at her to retreat. She was a vampire, after all, distant, cold, a creature of the night. And yet, here she was, trembling under his gaze, caught between the pull of the sun's embrace and the magnetic draw of this beast in front of her. He took a step closer, his heavy footsteps muffled by the fallen leaves. The air between them crackled with unspoken words, as though they both knew that something powerful had just begun to stir. He didn't speak at first. His lips twisted into a barely perceptible grin, one that sent a shiver down her spine. It was dangerous. All of it was dangerous. Seraphina's voice was barely a whisper, caught in the wind. "You should stay away from me," she said, but even she could hear the doubt in her words. She wasn't sure if she meant it. The hunger in her blood fought against the words. Kale's smile deepened, his voice low, like the growl of a wolf in the wild. "You're the one who came to me," he replied, his words like a challenge and an invitation. He stepped even closer now, his presence overwhelming, his scent thick in the air, earth, pine, and the unmistakable musk of the beast. Seraphina's heart pounded harder as he closed the gap between them, her mind warring with her instincts. His power was undeniable. There was no denying it. The way he moved, with purpose, with strength that seemed to ripple through the very air, was intoxicating. She had seen many creatures, many men, none like him, none with this kind of power, this feral grace. She instinctively took a step back, but her legs seemed heavy, unwilling to obey. "I don't need your help," she said, though her voice trembled. She wanted to push him away, but every fiber of her being wanted to do the opposite. Kale reached out, his large hand brushing against the side of her face with a gentleness that didn't match the storm within him. It was a touch that burned and soothed all at once. His fingers lingered just a moment too long, as though he too was trying to figure out the boundaries between them, the danger of it. "You don't know what you need," Kale murmured, his voice like the deep rumble of thunder. His other hand came up to touch her neck, the feeling of his rough fingertips against her cool skin, causing a jolt of heat to spread through her. "But I do." Seraphina's breath caught in her throat as the full weight of his gaze locked onto hers. A burning hunger flared within her, not for blood, but for him. The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the scent of pine and the lingering trace of something more primal. Kale stood at the edge of the clearing, his eyes never leaving her. Seraphina had retreated a few steps, but she didn't move far. Her gaze was locked onto him, her breathing shallow, as though the very air between them was thick with a tension neither of them could escape. She was like a phantom, ethereal and dangerous. Her skin shimmered faintly in the moonlight, a porcelain shade that seemed too fragile for this world. Yet he knew, without a doubt, that she was no fragile creature. There was power in the way she carried herself, an ancient dark force wrapped in the shape of a woman. Her beauty was deadly, an allure that drew him in like a moth to a flame, even though he knew it could burn him. The space between them seemed to pulse with energy, thick and heavy, but it was more than the mere air. It was a force, a connection that neither of them could deny. The beast inside Kale stirred restlessly, pacing, eager to close the distance. His body was on fire with something other than hunger, something far more dangerous. His heart pounded, his muscles ached with the need to reach her. But he held back. The beast wanted to claim, to mark, to take. But Kale was not just any animal. He knew restraint. He was not a creature driven only by instinct. Yet here, standing before Seraphina, that restraint was slipping away. Seraphina, despite the pain in her chest, despite the knowing burn that stretched through her very bones, met his gaze with an intensity that made his breath hitch. There was a battle in her eyes, one he understood all too well. She was fighting something, fighting herself. But what? Did she feel it too? The pull, the undeniable bond that tugged at the very marrow of his bones. I told you to stay away. Her voice was a whisper, but it cut through the stillness like a blade. But Kale didn't flinch. His lips parted in a slow, dangerous smile, his eyes narrowing as he took a step closer. "And yet you're still here," he said, his voice low and rough, like the growl of a predator stalking his prey. "You can't stay away. Neither of us can." Her breath caught, and for a moment, the space between them seemed to vanish. Her heart, cold and distant as it had always been, quickened. His scent, a mix of earth, pine, and something darker, filled her senses, and she had to fight the urge to step forward, to feel the raw power that radiated from him. She had never felt anything like it before. The ferocity in his gaze, the undeniable force in the way he moved, it was intoxicating. "Why are you here?" she asked, voice steady, though her pulse hammered in her ears. "What do you want from me?" Kale's smile faltered, just for a moment, as though the question had struck a chord within him. He was no stranger to desire, but this was different. He didn't have the answer. Not yet. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice low. "But I can't stay away." It was the truth, and in that moment, both of them knew it. He was a predator drawn to something just as deadly, something just as dangerous, and neither of them could resist the pull. The tension crackled in the air, thick with unspoken promises. Seraphina took another step back, but her eyes never left his. Her body burned with the knowledge that she shouldn't want him, that it was a terrible mistake, yet the pull was undeniable. Kale's chest rose and fell, his gaze never leaving hers. He wasn't about to chase her, not yet. But the truth was clear. No matter how much she tried to run, no matter how far she retreated into the night, the wolf would follow. And when the time came, he would take her. The night stretched out before them, endless and thick with the weight of their silence. Seraphina stood, rigid and still, every muscle in her body coiled tight as though ready to flee. She could feel this presence behind her like a shadow, pressing down on her, as though the very air thickened in his wake. Kale wasn't close, but the pull between them, like an invisible force, drew her toward him, a gravity she couldn't escape. She swallowed hard, her throat dry. Her instincts screamed at her to leave, to retreat back into the darkness where she belonged. She was a vampire, a creature of night, and everything about this man, this beast, felt wrong. His power, his heat, everything about him felt like a flame she was drawn to, even though it burned, even though it would destroy her. Her breath caught in her throat when she heard the sound of his footsteps, the crunch of leaves beneath his boots, slow and deliberate. She didn't turn, but she could feel him getting closer, that deep growl of his presence building, vibrating through the air. "Why are you still here?" Her voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the night like a sharp blade. "I told you to stay away." Kale didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped forward, his heavy steps landing just behind her. His scent, wild and untamed, seeped into the air, thick with earth and the rawness of his kind. It filled her senses, clouding her thoughts. And then a single breathless moment passed. His hand, large and powerful, reached out to her. Before she could move, his fingers brushed against her neck, just beneath her jaw, the warmth of his touch searing into her skin. Her breath hitched, her heart stumbling in her chest. She froze. For a moment, everything stopped. The beating of her heart, the blood that rushed in her veins, the sounds of the world around them. It was just the two of them, suspended in the air, caught between the past and something darker, something dangerous. His touch was gentle, but there was no mistaking the strength behind it. The overwhelming dominance of his presence washed over her, pressing her down. "Stop," she breathed, though the word came out more like a plea than an order. Cale's hand didn't move. Instead, he tightened his grip, just enough to send a pulse of heat shooting through her. His thumb traced the curve of her jaw, like he was memorizing the feel of her skin. His touch was light, but every inch of her body reacted to it, as though her very soul recognized him, called out to him. She hated it. She feared it. But she couldn't run. Not now. "You don't get to tell me what to do," Cale murmured, his voice low, thick with a hunger that made her shiver. "Not when you're the one who's been running for me. Not when you're the one who needs me." His words hung in the air between them, heavy, suffocating. The pull between them was so strong now, she could hardly breathe. Every inch of her skin burned where his fingers touched. He was a wildfire, and she was the dry brush that would ignite the moment he gave in to the urge. She could feel it in the way her body responded, the heat building, the blood in her veins pounding against her skin, desperate for release. She tried to move away, but the moment she did, Cale's other hand shot out, gripping her wrist with a force that left no room for escape. He spun her around to face him, his amber eyes blazing with something wild and unrestrained. The intensity of his gaze held her captive, rooting her to the spot. "You want to run," he said, his voice a gravelly whisper, "but you won't." Her heart hammered in her chest, the pulse in her throat racing. The words escaped her lips before she could stop them. "You don't know what you're doing." Cale's smile was dangerous, predatory. "I think I do," he whispered, pulling her closer. And in that moment, everything else faded away. The air was thick with a tension that neither of them could escape, a delicate dance of attraction and fear. Cale held Serafina close, his grip firm around her wrist, his body a solid wall of muscle and power against her. She was frozen in place, her back pressed to his chest, and she could feel the warmth of him seeping into her, despite the distance between their worlds. She was the night, cold and eternal. He was the storm, untamed, burning with something wild and uncontrollable. Her breath came in shallow, uneven gasps as she struggled to find the words. Every part of her screamed to pull away, to flee, but her body betrayed her. Her heart pounded against her ribs like a drumbeat, urging her to stay. He was dangerous. He was everything she should run from. And yet she was rooted to the spot by something deeper than logic, something far more primal. Cale's hand, still gripping her wrist, moved slowly up her arm, his fingers brushing against her skin like a whisper. His touch was gentle, but every inch of him screamed with the need to claim, to consume. She could feel the heat of his body against hers, the wild energy that surged through him, and it made her chest tighten with something that was not fear. It was longing. "I told you to stay away," she whispered, her voice barely audible against the deafening thrum of her pulse. "You don't understand what you're doing." His head lowered, his breath warm against her ear as his grip tightened, pulling her closer. "I understand more than you think," he murmured, his voice low and dangerous, as though the words were meant for her alone. His lips brushed her ear, sending a wave of heat down her spine. "I understand that you need me, that we both need this." Her body was betraying her. She could feel the way her heart raced at his words, the way the heat from his body seeped into her like fire against ice. His touch, his closeness, was a drug, and she couldn't pull away. She wanted to. She had to. But the hunger inside her, the hunger that had always been there, grew stronger the closer he came. Her breath caught in her throat, her voice strained as she spoke again, this time with more force. "You don't know what you're saying," she hissed, pulling against his hold. "You're playing with fire, Cale. You're playing with something you don't understand." Cale's grip tightened, His face inches from hers, his amber eyes blazing with an intensity that sent a jolt through her chest. "And what if I do understand?" he said, his voice dripping with quiet confidence. "What if I know exactly what I'm doing? What if it's you who doesn't understand?" Her chest tightened as the truth of his words sank in. There was something in his gaze, something that spoke of deep, unspoken knowledge. He wasn't afraid of her. He didn't fear the monster she was, didn't shrink from the darkness that clung to her. Instead, he seemed drawn to it, like a moth to a flame, as if the fire would consume him just as much as it threatened to consume her. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to steady her breath, but the pull between them was undeniable. She could feel the wolf inside him, restless and eager, clawing at the surface. He was a predator, and she, despite her ethereal beauty, was no stranger to the hunt. But this was different. This was not the game of cat and mouse she was used to. This was something else entirely, a storm, a collision of forces that neither of them could control. Kale's hand slipped from her wrist, moving to the back of her neck, pulling her head back slightly so he could look into her eyes. There was no mistaking the fire in his gaze, the raw hunger that burned there. The predator inside him had awakened, and it was pulling him closer, pushing him towards something he didn't know if he could resist. Seraphina's breath hitched as his thumb traced the curve of her throat, a movement both tender and possessive. Her blood rushed in her ears, louder than her thoughts, louder than the fear that still lingered in her chest. The hunger inside her stirred, and for a moment she thought she might drown in it. In him, in them. "You can fight it all you want," Kale whispered, his lips brushing against her skin. "But I know you're as drawn to me as I am to you." She shivered, her thoughts scattered, torn between desire and self-preservation. The battle within her was only beginning. The night stretched on, silent except for the sharp rhythm of their breaths. Seraphina could feel the tension between them like an electric current, a crackling charge in the air that both terrified and exhilarated her. She stood still, her back pressed to a nearby tree, every nerve in her body on edge, as though the world itself was holding its breath. She could feel his presence, like a storm, powerful and relentless, just steps away. Kale didn't move immediately, though his gaze never wavered from hers. His eyes were molten amber, fierce and hungry, but there was something else in them too, a strange, raw tenderness that seemed impossible for someone like him. She could sense the beast inside him, prowling just beneath the surface, eager to claim what it had found. The weight of that hunger pressed on her chest, but it wasn't the terror she expected. It was something else, an anticipation, a craving. She couldn't tear her eyes away from him. He was too much, a storm in human form, with every movement brimming with power. His muscles flexed beneath his shirt, his chest rising and falling with each steady breath. The air around him seemed to vibrate, thick with an unspoken promise, and Seraphina found herself caught in it, unwilling to look away. Kale took a step closer, his heavy boots making no sound as they sank into the earth. The world seemed to narrow, shrinking down to just the two of them. Seraphina's body stiffened as she tried to fight the pull of him, the magnetic force that seemed to draw her in despite everything. She was a predator, cold and calculating, but she had never felt anything like this before. "You're trembling," Kale said, his voice rough, low, like a growl that vibrated through her very bones. His eyes darkened as he took another step forward, closing the distance between them. "You're afraid of me, aren't you?" Seraphina's lips parted, but no words came. Her throat was dry, her pulse quickening as his proximity consumed her. She wanted to say something, anything, to push him away, to remind herself that he was a threat, that he was dangerous, but the words stuck in her chest. He was danger, and yet she couldn't find the strength to escape. Kale's gaze softened, a flicker of something else passing through his eyes, a strange gentleness that almost made her believe he wasn't just a beast, but something more, something alive, something she didn't want to understand but couldn't seem to avoid. "Don't be afraid," he whispered, his voice a soft growl. "I won't hurt you." She flinched at the words, but they only drew her closer to him. There was no logic in it. There was no reason for her to stay. But here she was, unable to tear herself away from him, drawn to him like a moth to a flame. The heat of his body reached her, seeping into her skin, and she fought the urge to lean into it. His hand moved slowly, impossibly slowly, as if testing the air between them before reaching for her. His fingers brushed against her cheek, his touch like fire against ice. Serafina gasped, her body reacting before her mind could catch up. The heat of his skin burned her, but it wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, a connection that was far more dangerous than any touch could explain. "You can fight this," Kale said, his voice low, "but it won't change anything." Serafina swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking into her like a stone. She could fight. She could walk away. But even as the thought crossed her mind, she knew it wasn't true. The fight was already lost. She was already lost to him. Kale leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. "You don't have to run anymore," he murmured, his lips barely brushing her skin. "Not for me." The words sent a shiver through her body. She didn't know whether to push him away or pull him closer. But as he held her there in the dark, with the night closing in around them, the only thing that mattered was the hunger. The hunger that roared inside her, desperate and all-consuming. And when Kale's hand cupped her face, turning her toward him with a force she couldn't resist, the world narrowed to nothing but him. Nothing but the wolf and the woman and the dark things they were becoming together. The moon hung heavy in the sky, casting a pale glow over the forest floor, where shadows seemed to stretch endlessly. The quiet was deafening, only broken by the steady thrum of their heartbeats, racing in sync despite the distance between them. Serafina stood motionless, caught in the gravity of Kale's presence. She could feel the power radiating off him, a steady, unyielding force that made the air feel thicker with each passing moment. Kale was no longer standing at a distance, no longer circling her like the predator he was. Now he was close, too close. His breath, warm and heavy, ghosted across the back of her neck, sending a shiver down her spine. She could feel the heat of him, the wild energy that hummed in his veins, vibrating through her, and she hated how much she wanted it. Every part of her body screamed to pull away, to distance herself from him and the dangerous allure he carried. But something deeper, the primal part of her, ached to lean into him, to feel the raw, untamed force of the wolf he was. "Why are you still here?" She finally forced the words out, her voice soft but filled with an edge of warning. It was a question she had asked countless times, but now it was different. This time, she didn't want the answer. She didn't want to hear the truth. Kale's eyes glimmered in the darkness, amber fire flickering with something far more dangerous than any flame. He stepped closer, closing the last of the distance between them until she could feel the heat radiating from his chest. He didn't answer right away, his lips curling into a slow, knowing smile. Instead, his large hand reached up, brushing a strand of hair away from her face with a gentleness that didn't belong to a creature like him. And yet, there was nothing soft about the way he held her gaze. "I'm here because I can't stay away," Kale said quietly, the raw honesty in his voice making her blood run cold. "I'm here because every part of me knows you need me, and every part of me needs you too." Her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to argue. She wanted to shout at him, to tell him to leave, to stay away from her. But those words felt hollow now, as if they were meant to deceive only herself. The truth was, she was drawn to him, not just by the hunger, but by something far more dangerous, a desire to know him, to understand the wildness that lived inside him, something that mirrored the darkness within her. Serafina's pulse thundered in her ears, her blood racing with something far more than anger, her thoughts scattered, tangled in the storm of her emotions. She wanted to hate him, to destroy him before he could do the same to her. But standing here, so close to him, she couldn't help but feel that pull, that undeniable connection. Kale reached out, his fingers brushing lightly against her skin, tracing the curve of her jaw. His touch was a spark, igniting something deep within her. He was so close now she could feel the steady beat of his heart, and it made her feel fragile, as if she might shatter if she wasn't careful. "Why are you fighting this?" Kale's voice was low, almost tender, though his eyes still burned with that dangerous hunger. "You feel it too, don't you? The pull, the need." She couldn't deny it. Not anymore. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she found herself leaning toward him, just slightly, as though her body had already made the decision her mind had been too afraid to face. "Just admit it," he murmured, his voice thick with a mixture of command and something softer, almost pleading. You want this as much as I do. Seraphina closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of his words settle in her chest like a stone. And for just one fleeting second, she let herself believe it. Let herself feel the intensity of what they were becoming. She had no idea what it meant, but in that moment it didn't matter. Her breath was ragged when she opened her eyes again. Cale was watching her, his gaze softening just a fraction, as if he could see the internal battle waging inside her. He didn't need to say another word. He didn't have to. The hunger between them had already spoken louder than anything else. The night was still, and the world around them seemed to hold its breath. Seraphina stood there, her back against the rough bark of a tree, every muscle tense, every nerve alight. The distance between her and Cale had all but disappeared, and she could feel the weight of him pressing down on her, drawing her into his orbit. He was too close now. She could feel the heat of his body radiating against her skin. Too close to ignore, too close to fight. She should step back. She should push him away, but instead her feet remained rooted to the ground, her heart thundering in her chest. Cale's gaze never left hers, amber eyes flickering with something primal, something dangerous. The pull between them was undeniable now, like two forces caught in a storm, impossible to separate. She tried to breathe, tried to steady herself, but the closer he came, the harder it became. His presence consumed her, and she couldn't think past the hunger that had ignited inside her. He moved with the grace of a predator, each step slow, deliberate, as though he knew the effect he had on her. His hand reached out, his fingers brushing against her cheek, a simple touch that sent a tremor through her body. Her skin burned beneath his touch, her pulse racing as though it couldn't keep up with the rapid thud of her heart. It was a touch so intimate, so tender, it was almost cruel. Seraphina. Cale's voice was a low murmur, like a growl, but it was soft with something more, something softer than the wolf inside him. You don't have to be afraid of me. His words sank deep into her chest, but she couldn't bring herself to speak. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She was trapped, locked in the magnetic pull of his gaze, the steady pressure of his hands still resting against her face. I've told you before, he continued, his voice rough with barely contained desire. I won't hurt you. The words weren't enough to calm her racing heart. They weren't enough to extinguish the fire growing inside her. She was a vampire, bound by the night, and yet, in his presence, she felt something she'd never known before, a yearning, an aching for something more. It wasn't just the hunger for blood, not just the instinct to survive. It was something far more dangerous. It was a hunger for him, the beast within him, something raw and untamed that matched the darkness inside her. Cale's thumb traced the curve of her jaw, his touch gentle, almost reverent. He moved closer still, his breath hot against her ear. Don't you see? We're the same, you and I. The words slipped into her, worming their way into her thoughts. He was right. In a way, they were the same. Two creatures bound by darkness, by hunger. He was a wolf, wild and untamed, and she was a vampire, a creature of night. And yet, the closer they came, the more she realized there was a dangerous kind of balance between them, a balance that neither of them could escape. I've never wanted anything more than I want you right now, Cale whispered, his voice low and dangerous. The words meant only for her. He leaned in closer, the air between them charged with heat. And I know you feel it too. The pull, the need. Seraphina shuddered at the intensity in his voice. His words felt like a challenge, a dare to the very thing inside her that had always resisted, always fought the pull of something like him. She should walk away. She should resist. But everything in her screamed to give in. Everything in her wanted to feel him, to let the wild, dangerous part of him consume her. But her mind still clung to the shadows. The reality of what they were, what they could become, was too much to bear. Why are you fighting this? Cale's voice softened, but the hunger in it remained. You're not meant to fight it, Seraphina. He was so close now, she could feel the heat of his chest pressing against hers. His hands slid to her shoulders, strong and unyielding, pulling her toward him until there was no space left between them. The world seemed to vanish, and in that moment it was just them, two creatures bound by the same dark hunger, and the abyss between them, drawing them closer with each passing second. The forest was still, then only sound the soft rustle of the leaves above, whispering secrets in a language only the night could understand. The air between Seraphina and Kale was thick with something unspoken, a charge that neither could deny. He stood before her, close enough now that she could feel the steady rhythm of his heart beneath the heat of his chest, and it only served to heighten the electric tension between them. His presence was a force, undeniable and raw, and no matter how much she wanted to fight it, she couldn't pull away. Her breath was shallow, her heart racing as she looked up at him. His amber eyes burned with an intensity that mirrored the fire rising within her. Kale was no longer just a figure, no longer simply a dangerous creature of the night. He was a part of the storm, a whirlwind that seemed to have taken over her world. "You're not like the others," she whispered, her voice a quiet tremor. "You're not like them, Kale." He leaned in closer, his lips brushing against her ear, the words escaping his mouth in a low growl that sent a shiver down her spine. "Neither are you," he said, his voice thick with desire and something deeper, something primal. "We're more alike than you know. You feel it too, don't you? The pull." Her heart pounded faster now, the weight of his words sinking deep into her chest. She wanted to deny it, to tell herself that she wasn't like him, that she could walk away, but the truth was too loud to ignore. The hunger inside her stirred, a hunger that had always been there, just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment. And in this moment, with him so close, it was all-consuming. Kale's hand moved slowly to her jaw, his fingers brushing lightly against her skin. The touch was both gentle and possessive, as though he were claiming her in a way that couldn't be undone. She felt the pull of him in every inch of her body, a gravity that she couldn't escape, no matter how hard she tried. "I can't stay away from you," Kale murmured, his voice a low growl, his lips brushing against the edge of her cheek. "And you can't stay away from me." Seraphina closed her eyes for a moment, fighting the overwhelming urge to let go. She should push him away. She should walk away before everything became too much, before they both drowned in the hunger and the darkness between them. But when she opened her eyes again, his gaze was fixed on hers, unwavering, and she felt herself pulled back in. "Why?" Her voice was barely a whisper, a question she didn't want to ask but had to. "Why do you want me?" His gaze softened, just for a moment, before the hunger returned, fiercer than ever. "Because you're everything I've ever needed, and everything I've ever wanted. You and I, Seraphina, we're fire and ice, wild and untamed. We belong to the night." She felt it then, the truth of his words sinking into her bones. They were two creatures born of darkness, drawn together by forces they couldn't name. In his touch, in his words, there was no fear. There was only the promise of something raw, something forbidden, and yet she couldn't bring herself to pull away. Without another word, Hale's hand slid to the back of her neck, his fingers threading through her hair, tugging her forward until their lips were a breath away. Her pulse thrummed in her ears, and for one moment, one perfect moment, everything else in the world seemed to fall away. There was only him, only her, and the fire that burned between them. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, he closed the gap between them, capturing her lips in a kiss that was as wild and untamed as the wolf inside him. And in that kiss, Seraphina felt herself falling deeper into the abyss, where the darkness could never let her go.